Listen to me. When life reaches its final breath, people don't regret the risks they took, they regret the chances they never dared to take. They don't regret the mistakes, they regret the dreams they left unlived. These are the top 5 regrets of the dying. Truths whispered in the last moments of life. Truths meant for us who still have time. Bronnie Ware never set out to become the keeper of these secrets. She was an ordinary woman who chose a path many of us would find too heavy to carry. She worked in palliative care, spending her days with people who were not just sick, but standing at the very edge of life itself. Every day, she walked into rooms where the clock was running out, where the air was filled with a silence that only comes when tomorrow is no longer promised. And yet, within that silence, she found something extraordinary. As the body grew weaker, the truth grew louder. People dropped their masks. They didn't pretend anymore. They didn't care about impressing anyone, and they didn't hold back their hearts. They spoke with raw honesty, because when time is almost gone, there is no reason to lie. Not to others, and not to yourself. Bronnie began to notice patterns in their words. Different people, different ages, different lives, but the same confessions came again and again. Their voices shook with both sorrow and clarity. These weren't complaints about missed promotions, lost money, or failed plans. No, what haunted them were the things they never dared to do, the words they never spoke, the love they never chased, the happiness they never allowed themselves to feel. Imagine sitting by a bedside hearing someone say, "If only I had been braver. If only I had spoken my truth. If only I had lived for me instead of them." Their words cut through the heart like lightning. And Bronnie, sitting there quietly, realized she wasn't just listening to regrets. She was holding the final lessons of life itself. And that's where the story begins. The story of 5 regrets that do not belong to the dying alone, but to every one of us. Because if we dare to listen now, if we have the courage to act while we still have breath in our lungs, then maybe, just maybe, we can reach the end without regret, only peace. As Bronnie listened day after day, she realized something many of us never stop to think about until it's too late. When you are standing at the edge of life, clarity arrives with brutal honesty. The small worries that consume us, what others think, the money we chase, the mistakes we hide, suddenly mean nothing. At the end, no one talks about deadlines or paychecks. They talk about love, memories, and moments they wish they had lived differently. The dying see life from a place we cannot yet imagine. Imagine knowing you have only weeks left. Every sunrise becomes a gift, every breath a reminder, every word a chance that may never come again. From that perspective, truth can no longer be avoided. They confess the weight of years spent in silence, the loneliness of letting friendships slip away, the ache of living a life built on expectations instead of desires. Bronnie saw how regret did not come from what people did. It came from what they left undone. The conversations never had, the laughter never shared, the dreams never chased. These unspoken truths echoed in every room she entered, like a warning to those of us still living with time. And yet, hidden in those regrets was a gift. Because regret is not just pain, it is a mirror that shows us what truly matters, if only we dare to look before it's too late. The dying were not bitter, they were honest. And in their honesty, they offered us something powerful, the chance to live differently now. They were, without realizing it, teachers of life, speaking from the edge of death. Their words were not meant to break us, but to wake us, to remind us that happiness, courage, and love are choices, and every day we delay them, we risk carrying the same regrets to our final breath. Among all the confessions Bronnie heard, one regret rose above the rest, whispered again and again in voices filled with sorrow. "I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." Think about that for a moment. How many of us are living on autopilot, following a script that was written for us by society, by family, by fear? From the outside, many of Bronnie's patients looked successful. They had careers, stability, even respect. But as their lives drew to a close, they admitted a haunting truth. They had ignored their own dreams. They had silenced the voice inside that whispered, "This is who you really are." One man confessed that he had always wanted to be an artist, but instead he became an accountant because it was the safe choice. Decades later, lying in bed, he spoke with tears in his eyes about canvases that were never painted, colors that never left the brush, a dream that never breathed. Another woman admitted she had stayed in a marriage she didn't want, simply because she was afraid of what others would say. Her whole life became a performance for approval that never truly came. These stories weren't rare. They were everywhere. People lived for the expectations of others, and in doing so, they abandoned themselves. At the end, that abandonment became unbearable. And here lies the lesson for us. Courage isn't just about fighting battles or taking risks. It's about daring to be who you really are. It's about saying no when the world tries to write your story for you, and saying yes to the voice inside that longs to be heard. When you reach your final days, the opinions of others will vanish like smoke. The only question that will matter is this: did I live my life, or did I live theirs? The dying remind us with heartbreaking clarity: don't wait until the end to find the courage to live true to yourself. Because the saddest words you can ever whisper are, "I never really lived at all." The second regret came like a heavy sigh, repeated by countless voices that carried the same pain. "I wish I hadn't worked so hard." Bronnie heard this most often from men, but it wasn't just them. Women, too, confessed that they had lost the most precious years of their lives to endless hours of work. They chased promotions, paychecks, and security, but in the end, none of it held meaning compared to the moments they missed. One father admitted that he had spent more time in his office than at the dinner table. He provided everything his children could ever need, except the one thing they longed for most: his presence. By the time he realized it, his children were grown, and the laughter of their childhood had become a memory he could never touch again. Another woman shared how she worked tirelessly to save for the future, always telling herself she would relax someday. But someday never came, and now she wondered why she had traded sunsets, conversations, and joy for deadlines and meetings. What shocked Bronnie was not the fact that people worked, it was that they had no balance. Work consumed them, and life slipped quietly into the background. They realized too late that money can be replaced, but time cannot. You can rebuild a career, but you can never buy back a lost birthday, a missed smile, or the warmth of a hand you didn't hold when it mattered. And yet the dying weren't telling us to avoid work altogether. Their message was simpler, deeper. Don't let work steal your life. Don't let your job become the reason you forget to live. Because when the end comes, no one whispers, "I wish I had spent more time at the office." They whisper about the walks they didn't take, the stories they didn't tell, the memories they didn't make. This regret carries a warning, but also a choice. We can keep running endlessly after success, or we can pause, breathe, and remember what truly matters. Because the truth is, life isn't measured in hours worked, but in moments lived. And if we aren't careful, we'll discover too late that we spent our lives earning a living instead of living a life. The third regret was whispered with a kind of heaviness that comes from years of silence. "I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings." So many of Bronnie's patients confessed that they had swallowed their truth for a lifetime. They stayed quiet to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, or simply because they were afraid of being judged. They hid their pain behind forced smiles, their love behind unspoken words, their anger behind silence. And while they kept the world comfortable, they themselves carried the burden of an unlived heart. One man admitted he had been in love with a woman for decades, yet never told her. He married someone else, built a life, but on his deathbed he whispered her name with tears in his eyes. Another patient revealed how she had never spoken up when she was mistreated. She endured quietly, convincing herself that silence was strength. But in the end, she realized her silence had only chained her, stealing years she could have lived with freedom and dignity. Bronnie noticed that unexpressed feelings did more than create regret, they created distance. Relationships were broken not by arguments, but by words never spoken. Children never knew their parents' pride. Friends never heard how much they were loved. Partners never truly understood each other, because honesty was replaced with fear. At the edge of life, many admitted they wished they had cried when they needed to cry, shouted when they needed to shout, and most of all, said, "I love you," when they felt it. Because feelings unspoken don't disappear. They sit in the soul, heavy and unresolved, until time runs out. The dying remind us that courage is not just climbing mountains or chasing dreams. It's looking someone in the eye and saying what your heart longs to say. It's being vulnerable, even when your voice shakes. Because when the end comes, it won't be the fights you regret, it will be the silence. If we can learn anything from their words, it is this: don't let fear steal your truth. Don't wait for the right time. Speak now. Love now. Be honest now. Because unspoken feelings are not just lost words, they are lost lives. The fourth regret carried a quiet sadness, a longing that could no longer be filled. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Again and again, Bronnie heard this confession from people whose lives were now drawing to a close. In their younger years, friendships were everything. Laughter that lasted until sunrise, secrets shared without fear, the comfort of knowing someone truly understood them. But as the years passed, work, responsibilities, and the weight of life slowly pushed those friendships aside. Calls went unanswered. Letters remained unwritten. Promises to meet again were postponed until someday quietly faded into never. One woman wept as she recalled her childhood friend, the one who stood by her through every storm, yet decades had passed without a word between them. Another patient spoke of old companions who once felt like family, now reduced to fading names and forgotten faces. They didn't lose their friends because of anger or betrayal. They lost them because of neglect, because they thought there would always be more time. But at the end, time was gone, and so were the people they wished they had held on to. Bronnie saw the deep ache this regret carried. Friends are not just companions, they are mirrors of who we are, reminders of joy, of playfulness, of the person we were before life grew heavy. Losing those connections meant losing a part of themselves. The lesson they left behind was clear. Relationships are fragile treasures, and they don't survive on good intentions alone. They need effort, they need care, they need time. It's easy to get caught in the rush of life, convincing ourselves that we'll reach out tomorrow, that we'll reconnect when things calm down. But tomorrow is never promised. In those quiet rooms, filled with fading breaths, the truth became undeniable. Success and possessions mean little if you have no one to share them with. At the end, what matters most is not how many people admired you, but how deeply you connected with the few who truly loved you. Their regret is a reminder for us now. Send the message, make the call, meet for that cup of tea. Because one day, it won't be your achievements you long for, it will be the voices of your friends and the moments you could have shared. The fifth regret was perhaps the most heartbreaking, because it revealed a truth so simple, yet so often ignored. I wish I had let myself be happier. Bronnie's patients confessed that happiness had always been within their reach, but they had convinced themselves otherwise. They lived as if joy had to be earned, as if contentment would only come after the next achievement, the next milestone, the next someday. They wore masks, pretending life was fine, when deep inside, they knew they were only existing, not truly living. One man admitted he had spent his whole life waiting for retirement to finally relax, to finally travel, to finally smile without guilt. But retirement came with sickness, and the dreams he had postponed were never realized. Another woman spoke of how she always compared herself to others, always believing she wasn't enough. She realized too late that happiness was never about perfection. It was about permission. Permission to laugh, to dance, to play, even when life wasn't perfect. The tragedy Bronnie witnessed was not that happiness was out of reach. It was that people never gave themselves the freedom to embrace it. They let fear, pride, and seriousness lock them into lives that felt heavy and gray. At the end, they longed for the small joys they had once overlooked, the sunsets they rushed past, the laughter they suppressed, the moments of silliness they avoided because they feared looking foolish. But here is the gift hidden in their sorrow. Happiness is not a destination, it is a choice. It is not found in the future, but in this very moment. The dying remind us that joy is not about having everything. It's about appreciating what we already have, about allowing ourselves to smile even when life isn't perfect. At the end of life, many whispered the same truth. I could have been happier if only I had allowed myself to be. And that regret teaches us this: don't wait. Don't postpone joy for tomorrow. Choose it today. Because happiness is not something you find at the end of the road. It's the way you walk the road itself. When Bronnie looked back on all the stories she had heard, she realized something extraordinary. The regrets of the dying were not just confessions. They were warnings, reflections, and gifts meant for the living. Every whispered regret carried the same message. Life is short, fragile, and far more precious than we allow ourselves to believe. The truth is, we rarely pause long enough to reflect. We live as if time is infinite, as if tomorrow is guaranteed. We run faster, chase harder, and tell ourselves we'll slow down later. But reflection is what turns regrets into lessons. Reflection is what allows us to stop and ask, am I really living my own life, or just existing inside someone else's expectations? Am I choosing presence, or letting work consume me? Am I speaking my truth, or burying it in silence? Am I keeping my friendships alive, or letting them fade into memory? Am I allowing myself joy, or denying it because I'm waiting for the right moment? Bronnie realized that the dying were handing us a mirror, and the question was whether we had the courage to look into it now, while we still have the power to change. Reflection is not about regret, it's about awakening. It is the pause that saves us from wasting years on things that will not matter in the end. The power of reflection lies in its urgency, because once you are lying in a bed with the clock running out, there is no more time to rewrite the story. But right now, you and I still have time. We can choose differently. We can live authentically, protect our time, speak our truth, nurture our friendships, and allow ourselves happiness without guilt. The dying have already paid the price of regret, but they left us their wisdom so that we don't have to. The question is, will we listen? Because the greatest tragedy is not that people die, it's that so many never truly live. Imagine standing at the end of your journey and asking yourself, did I live true to my heart, or did I simply exist? Life is not about rushing from one goal to another. It's about meaning, authenticity, and choosing a path that resonates with your soul. Every day, we are faced with choices: to conform or to be real, to please others or to honor ourselves, to chase fleeting success or to build a life of depth and fulfillment. Too often, people realize too late that authenticity was the key they ignored while trying to unlock happiness in the wrong places. Choosing a life of meaning means having the courage to walk away from noise and listen to your own voice, to nurture relationships that truly matter, to embrace joy without guilt, and to leave behind a story worth remembering. Because at the end, what will matter most is not how much we owned or achieved, but how deeply we loved, how true we were to ourselves, and how bravely we lived a life that was uniquely ours. The choice is always in your hands. Live a life that will echo long after you are gone. Regret is a teacher disguised in pain. It whispers to us about the moments we missed, the words we never said, the dreams we left waiting. But regret is not meant to chain us. It's meant to guide us. Every I should have carries within it a lesson for I still can. When we transform regret into wisdom, it becomes a compass pointing us toward living more fully. Instead of drowning in the weight of what's lost, we rise with the clarity of what matters now, telling the people we love how much they mean, daring to pursue the dreams we once postponed, choosing presence over distraction, and courage over fear. Regrets remind us that life is fragile, time is fleeting, and every day is a gift waiting to be honored. So don't run from regret, embrace it, learn from it, and let it fuel a life where tomorrow never becomes another what if, but rather a story of bold choices, deep connections, and a heart unafraid to live fully. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this summary, make sure to check out our other powerful book summary videos. We've got plenty more that will inspire and guide you. Don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more life-changing ideas. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what you learned today. See you in the next video.